Welcome back to our channel. Discover the top 5 rare dimes that could be worth a fortune. Like and subscribe for more coin secrets. In 1982, the landscape of American coinage stood at a crossroads of economic change and evolving minting technology. A year that bore the weight of fiscal restraint and industrial adjustments, it saw the U.S. Mint make quiet yet important shifts in the materials and methods used to produce everyday currency. Among these coins was the familiar Roosevelt dime, a piece so common it passed through millions of hands unnoticed, until something unexpected slipped through the system. What emerged, hidden within the folds of routine production, was not a coin that shouted for attention but one that whispered with subtle defiance, carrying a flaw so minute and easily overlooked that only the most observant eyes would pause long enough to see it. The Roosevelt dime had been a staple in American pockets since 1946, a tribute to a beloved president, with its clean, unassuming design etched into the public consciousness. In 1982, dimes were minted at multiple facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. These mints carried out their duties under the pressure of precision and volume, spitting out millions of dimes each week with clockwork reliability. But as machines hummed and dies struck metal, something peculiar took form. Not all dimes bore the signature that certified their origin. A small subset emerged without the P mark, Philadelphia's customary indicator that began appearing only 2 years earlier, in 1980. These error coins, missing the mark, were visually indistinct from those produced before the change, which made the flaw all the more elusive. It wasn't discovered in a blinding revelation or under the glare of a jeweler's loupe at a professional grading office. Instead, it happened under the dim yellow light of a modest kitchen in rural Pennsylvania, where a middle-aged hobbyist named Harold Gibson, an avid coin roll hunter, routinely sifted through change for anomalies. Harold's fascination with coins wasn't driven by profit or prestige. It was the quiet pursuit of pattern and deviation that drew him in, the dance between what should be and what unexpectedly was. One evening, while sorting through a recently purchased batch of bank-wrapped dimes, he noticed a coin that seemed perfectly ordinary. It gleamed just like its neighbors, bore Roosevelt's side profile, and even had the characteristic torch on the reverse. But when his eyes, accustomed to subtle inconsistencies, drifted to the left of the date, he paused. The space beside the 1982 was oddly barren. No mint mark. He flipped it over, examined it again. Still nothing. At first, he considered that it might be a worn-down mark, rubbed away by circulation. But the rest of the coin was crisp. Edges were defined. Lettering sharp. It wasn't wear, it was absence. A void that shouldn't be there. Conflicted between disbelief and growing curiosity, Harold dug deeper. He turned to reference books, forums, and eventually experts. What he learned sent a slow current of excitement through him. Philadelphia had indeed begun stamping its coins with a P just 2 years prior, and by 1982, all dimes from that mint were expected to bear it. And yet, here was his coin, dated 1982, clean as a whistle, and utterly devoid of the mark. His hands trembled slightly, not with greed, but with the thrill of possibility. Initial inquiries yielded cautious optimism. Coin dealers were intrigued but non-committal. Some dismissed it as an oddity of little significance, others suspected a counterfeit or a post-mint alteration. But Harold persisted. He submitted the coin to a third-party grading service, and the results were conclusive: genuine U.S. Mint production, struck in Philadelphia, with no signs of tampering. The missing mint mark was not an aftereffect, it was born that way. As word spread in tight collector circles, the story of the 1982 No P dime gained traction. At first, it stirred polite interest, a curiosity among anomalies. But then, more examples began to surface, sporadically and always with difficulty. The error wasn't confined to just one roll or even a single bank branch. It appeared to be part of a specific batch, likely limited in scope, distributed in small quantities, and overlooked by the general public for months. The idea that something so subtle could evade notice for so long only amplified its allure. Gradually, the market responded. Prices in small auctions inched upward. A coin that once passed unnoticed in a soda machine now fetched $10, then $20, then $50. Collectors began scouring their jars, drawers, and local banks. Dealers started offering premiums for any 1982 dime with a clean face. For a while, it was a quiet treasure hunt, an insider's secret whispered across numismatic conventions, but markets are living things, pulsing with speculation and desire. By the mid-1990s, the 1982 no-P dime had gone from curiosity to coveted collectible. Its rarity wasn't just statistical, it was narrative. It had a story, a provenance of accidental omission wrapped in the context of a pivotal era in minting history. Some believed the flaw was caused by a filled die, residual metal or debris clogging the area where the P was supposed to be struck. Others argued it was a more systemic oversight, a moment of lapse in the precision-driven corridors of the mint itself. Either explanation only deepened the mystery. In online forums and collector meetings, stories emerged of dimes found in change from vending machines, handed out in grocery stores, or retrieved from decades-old jars tucked away in basements. Every new discovery rekindled interest. Prices surged sporadically, leaping with each authenticated find. By the early 2000s, mint state examples were commanding prices north of $20,000. In 2003, one pristine piece sold for $40,000 at a regional auction, shocking even seasoned collectors. The coin had officially crossed the boundary between oddity and treasure, but just as the momentum seemed to crest, the unexpected happened. A collector in Ohio, cataloging a large estate purchase, stumbled upon something bizarre: a 1982 Roosevelt dime not only missing the mint mark but struck on the wrong metal planchet. It appeared to be a dime, bore the correct design, and was dated accordingly. Yet its color, weight, and surface suggested it had been struck on a copper-nickel quarter planchet. The dimensions were slightly off, the sound it made when dropped distinctly different. Analysis confirmed the suspicion. A double error, that single coin, an error within an error, set the collecting world ablaze. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a compound glitch, a statistical outlier born of two simultaneous anomalies. The chances of such a coin existing bordered on myth. Auction houses scrambled. Estimates were thrown about with breathless anticipation. When the coin finally went up for bidding, it shattered expectations, selling for over $8,000. The value of the original no-P dime surged in response. Speculation ran wild. Were there others? How many more variations might lie in wait? What began as a coin overlooked in change had morphed into an icon of minting mishap. Collectors who had previously dismissed it as a trivial anomaly now spoke of it with reverence. As the years wore on, the no-P dimes became harder to find in uncirculated condition. Most had already been scooped up or degraded in circulation. Graded examples from trusted services began to define the market. Mint state 65 and above saw values soar into the thousands. Lower grades, once ignored, now fetched hundreds. The story had matured, and with it, the coin's place in history, and yet, amid the flurry of price charts and auction listings, the deeper significance remained. This was not merely about metal and mint marks. It was a testament to how even in a system engineered for perfection, human oversight, or mechanical hiccup, could birth something extraordinary. The no-P dime was a reminder that error isn't always failure, sometimes, it's legacy, but the final twist had yet to come. In 2018, during a private sale, a collector known only by initials, RL, revealed a dime with an uncirculated 1982 no-P surface, but something about the coin's reverse caught attention. The torch, traditionally centered and flanked by olive and oak branches, appeared subtly shifted. Not dramatically, just enough that side-by-side comparisons made the irregularity pop. Investigation revealed a die misalignment, barely detectable without magnification. This particular coin combined the missing mint mark with a rare misstrike on the reverse, effectively creating a trifecta of errors. It was, for all purposes, a singular specimen. The coin was quietly sold to a private collector for an undisclosed sum, but whispers suggest it exceeded $75,000. And yet, its existence is only known through rumor, unconfirmed photographs, and third-party murmurs. Some believe it was a hoax, a modified coin disguised as original. Others believe it's real, now locked away in a temperature-controlled vault, destined never to surface publicly again. That mystery lingers. The 1982 No-P dime remains a fascinating outlier, a coin born of transition, defined by absence, and chased by those who find meaning in small deviations. It reminds every collector that value isn't always obvious, that worth can hide in plain sight, waiting for someone like Harold to pause, look twice, and ask, "What's missing here?" And in that pause, the ordinary becomes legendary. In the mid-1990s, the U.S. Mint operated with a sense of rhythm and precision refined over decades. 1994 wasn't a year of great upheaval for American currency. It was a time of efficiency, where coins like the Roosevelt dime flowed from the presses at high speed, each one expected to meet exacting standards. The Roosevelt dime, ever present since 1946, was as familiar as any coin could be: small, practical, dependable. The mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco handled their output with technical sophistication and mechanical rigor. But as with every human endeavor, perfection remains an ideal, never an absolute. And tucked within the millions of dimes produced that year, something slipped past the watchful systems, a mistake so rare, it would take time, sharp eyes, and relentless curiosity to uncover its full meaning. It began in an unexpected way, through the hands of someone who wasn't even looking for coins at first. In central Illinois, a retired schoolteacher named Grace Donovan ran a small antique bookstore. She often accepted cash, and on a particularly quiet Thursday afternoon, she emptied the day's earnings into a tray to sort and prepare for deposit. Coins clinked together in idle clusters, but one dime caught her attention. It wasn't the shine, it looked no different from the others. Rather, it was the feel of it. Slightly thicker, subtly different when rolled between her fingers. At first, she assumed it was foreign or counterfeit. But the date, 1994, was clear. The edges were reeded as expected. Only the way it caught the light and its faint, almost imperceptible off-center strike hinted that something might be wrong. Grace didn't consider herself a collector, but she had an old magnifying glass she used for reading fine print on old books. She fetched it and took a closer look. That's when she noticed it: the design wasn't aligned correctly. The Roosevelt portrait was shifted upward by a fraction, not enough to look accidental, but just enough to make one question the minting process. She flipped the coin over, and the reverse design mirrored the misalignment. The torch and branches were crowded toward the rim, the spacing just slightly askew. It was the kind of difference most people would never notice. But now, it was unmistakable. Out of curiosity more than anything else, she put the coin aside and asked a friend who collected quarters if he had ever seen anything similar. He hadn't, but he recognized something odd in the coin's composition. The weight felt off, and he suggested she have it checked. Grace mailed it to a numismatics group in Missouri known for authenticating anomalies. A few weeks later, she received confirmation. Her coin had not only a misaligned die strike but, more astonishingly, appeared to be struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, slightly thicker, slightly heavier, but unmistakably real. This was no simple error. This was a rare convergence of incorrect planchet and strike misalignment, both produced within the legitimate process of U.S. Mint operations. Collectors took notice. Forums lit up with speculation. The 1994 dime hadn't previously been known for anything particularly unique. It was, like most years, a steady run with few surprises. But Grace's discovery changed that. It didn't take long before others began re-examining their own collections. A few more surfaced, each with subtle variations, off-center strikes, planchet irregularities, design doubling. Not many, just enough to raise eyebrows. A theory began to take shape. In the early part of that year, the Philadelphia Mint may have used a small batch of incorrect blanks, possibly intended for testing or even foreign currency contracts, and fed them into dime presses without realizing it. The dies stamped them, and the coins entered circulation like any other. The idea that these flawed coins had gone unnoticed for decades intrigued the community. The errors weren't glaring. They didn't announce themselves with missing elements or dramatic off-metal composition. They were quiet errors, whispers of deviation, coins that asked you to slow down and pay attention. That subtlety only increased their desirability. For seasoned collectors, finding one was like spotting a shadow in an otherwise symmetrical painting. In California, a young collector named Adrian Chavez uncovered one such dime in a roll purchased from a local bank. At first, he didn't see anything wrong, but after reading about Grace Donovan's story online, he started inspecting his collection with greater scrutiny. His 1994 dime had a slightly broader rim on one side, and the reverse torch was compressed against the edge. The coin was authenticated, and it confirmed the presence of a second die misalignment variant. The more that surfaced, the more the narrative deepened. These weren't isolated incidents. There seemed to be a very limited run of coins affected by similar conditions, all pointing to a narrow window in early 1994 when something went slightly wrong on the production floor, and as the pattern became clearer, so too did the market interest. Initially, these coins traded hands quietly. A few $100s here, perhaps more for examples in high-grade condition. But then came the auctions. One particularly sharp example, with full luster and visible strike misalignment, sold for over $1,300 in a late-night online bidding war. That moment changed everything. Dealers began appraising 1994 dimes with fresh eyes. Coin shows featured discussions on the anomaly. And the price continued to rise. The value trajectory wasn't a rocket, it was a climb, deliberate and steady, punctuated by the occasional spike when a new variant emerged or a particularly well-preserved example hit the market. Over the next decade, the error gained traction among specialists. It became a topic of articles, videos, and debates. Was the error mechanical, the result of poor calibration? Or was it procedural, caused by the accidental use of foreign blanks or test materials? No one could say definitively, and that ambiguity only fueled its mystique. Then, an unexpected twist shifted the focus yet again. In 2020, a coin dealer in New Jersey came across a 1994 dime that bore all the hallmarks of the misalignment, but upon closer inspection, it revealed a third anomaly. The date itself was distorted, not through wear but from a subtle case of machine doubling. The digits, particularly the before, had a ghostly outline beside them, a shadow of a second strike slightly offset from the first. This combination of misalignment, off-planchet characteristics, and machine doubling had never been documented on a 1994 dime before. It was a trifecta, three known errors converging on one otherwise unassuming piece of currency. The coin sparked an intense wave of bidding, eventually selling for $11,600. This sale triggered renewed interest in the error series, with collectors scouring their holdings once again. For a coin so readily dismissed in circulation, the 1994 dime now stood on the edge of legend. It was no longer just a minting oddity, it had become a symbol of how the smallest errors, when combined, can reshape the destiny of an entire coin series. From that moment on, the 1994 error dime entered the upper tier of modern coin collecting. Its appeal was multi-layered. It lacked the obviousness of a double die or missing mint mark, but that worked in its favor. It demanded attention. It required understanding. It rewarded the observant. By 2024, market values for authenticated 1994 error dimes ranged significantly based on the type and severity of the error. Coins with minor misalignments or faint doubling sold for between $20,000 and $40,000. More dramatic examples reached 5 figures. And then, among the highest echelon, those that exhibited multiple errors, struck on unusual planchets, or retained high mint state quality, prices soared. The coin that began as an unnoticed anomaly in Grace Donovan's bookstore drawer now occupies a place of prestige in the numismatic world. It reminds collectors that stories don't always start with a bang, sometimes, they begin with a whisper. And that even the most ordinary seeming item, touched by chance and shaped by deviation, can capture imagination and define a collection. As of today, the value of an exceptional 1994 Roosevelt dime error ranges from $54,000 to $115,000 depending on condition, clarity of the error, and historical documentation. It's not just a coin anymore, it's a moment in minting history, preserved in metal and discovered by those willing to look just a little bit closer. In 1999, the world stood on the edge of a new millennium. Across the globe, technology surged forward, the Internet revolution was in full swing, and in the quiet, humming halls of the United States Mint, coins continued to be pressed in steel, nickel, and copper. While all eyes were focused on the approaching year 2000 and the uncertainty it might bring, the routine production of coins went largely unnoticed. The Roosevelt dime, still bearing the same trusted design since 1946, was among the millions produced that year, minted steadily in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But within that production, something slipped through, something subtle, unannounced, and unexpected. It was a small error, so slight that even seasoned eyes missed it, yet significant enough that when discovered, it rippled through the collecting world with growing intensity. The dime in question bore the date 1999, and from the surface, it seemed like any other. The familiar profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt faced left, his name preserved in metal, the date clearly printed beneath his neck. On the reverse, the torch burned proudly between the olive and oak branches. Nothing appeared out of place at first glance. But sometimes, it takes more than a glance. Sometimes, it takes the patience of someone who looks at every coin not as currency but as history cast in miniature. That person, in this story, was a college student in Ohio named Marcus Whitmore. Unlike most students his age, Marcus didn't spend spare change without thought. He was an amateur numismatist, drawn to the details and backstories behind every coin he touched. He worked part-time at a local grocery store and often swapped out interesting coins from the till, exchanging them for bills from his own wallet. It wasn't about making money. It was about the quiet joy of discovery. And one Friday evening, as he closed his register for the night, he noticed a 1999 dime that felt ever so slightly off. It had a muted luster, as if the surface had aged unevenly. He pocketed it, not expecting much. Back in his dorm, under the glow of a desk lamp, Marcus examined the dime more closely. The edge was smooth in some areas where reading should have been present. The profile of Roosevelt was faintly doubled, not entirely, but subtly enough that his eye caught a second shadow behind the letters of Liberty. He flipped the coin and looked at the reverse. The torch seemed pressed too deeply into the coin, while the surrounding words looked thin, almost ghostly. He set the coin aside and compared it with another 1999 dime. The difference was real. Marcus spent the next few days researching, consulting online coin databases and collector forums. Eventually, he came across a thread buried deep in a forum archive. Someone in California had noticed similar anomalies in 1999 dimes and speculated that a batch had been struck with misaligned dies or worn-out hubs. No one had confirmation. Most replies had dismissed it as wear and tear, but Marcus knew better. His coin wasn't worn, it was improperly made. He decided to send it for professional grading and waited anxiously for the results. When the package returned weeks later, his heart pounded. The verdict was clear: struck with a misaligned die, exhibiting strong doubling on obverse details, and possibly struck on a slightly undersized planchet. The grading agency marked it as a verified mint error. News of Marcus's coin began to circulate in coin-collecting circles. What started as skepticism soon shifted to curiosity, and then to excitement, as other collectors began digging through their 1999 dimes. Slowly, additional examples were found. Each had its own variation, some with off-center strikes, others with die fatigue that produced blurred or flattened designs. A few even showed partial collars or signs of edge reading disappearing halfway through the rim. These weren't production defects caused by post-mint damage. These were mint-made flaws, birthed during high-speed operations when accuracy fell just slightly out of sync. It didn't take long before the market reacted. Collectors who had once overlooked the year began hoarding rolls of 1999 dimes, searching for similar traits. Coin dealers took interest, and prices for authenticated error specimens started to rise. At first, $100 here, maybe $200 for coins with strong doubling. But the climb was steady. Every few months, a new variation appeared at auction, each with its own story and flaw. Misaligned strikes, broad-struck coins, off-center errors, planchet anomalies. The 1999 dime transformed from a forgotten year into a collector's magnet. In 2006, an MS-66 grade error dime from 1999 with strong obverse doubling and off-metal composition sold for $2,200 in a regional auction. The sale was largely unnoticed outside the community, but within it, it marked a turning point. The value of 1999 error dimes began to appreciate more rapidly. Error specialists dubbed it one of the most overlooked years for Roosevelt dimes, and interest surged. By 2011, coin shows featured entire displays dedicated to the 1999 dime anomaly. Collectors compared notes, displayed their graded pieces, and speculated on just how many varieties might exist. Despite the growing visibility, the coins remained elusive in circulation. Only a handful of strong error types were found. The total population of confirmed 1999 dime errors remained small, especially in higher grades. This scarcity added fuel to the fire. Then, an unusual twist appeared, an error coin that defied all previous expectations. In 2015, a collector in Florida uncovered a 1999 dime with a fully rotated reverse. The coin's obverse showed Roosevelt upright, but the reverse was upside down, rotated 180 degrees. Known as a rotated die error, this was a known type of mint mistake, but rarely seen so cleanly and dramatically on modern dimes. The coin was slabbed and authenticated, and its presence reignited a fresh wave of interest. It sold at auction the following year for $9,800. The narrative now had depth and complexity. What began as a single misaligned die had broadened into a diverse field of known errors: misstrikes, doubling, broad strikes, planchet irregularities, rotated dies, all concentrated in a single mint year. As more were found, collectors began to assemble year-specific error sets. The 1999 dime became a central piece in modern U.S. minting anomalies. It offered variety, challenge, rarity, and the thrill of the hunt. One of the rarest examples surfaced in 2022. A coin dealer from Nevada, sorting through a bulk purchase of uncirculated rolls, identified a dime that seemed underweight. Upon inspection, it was confirmed to be a 1999 dime struck on a foreign planchet, believed to be from a coin intended for use in South America. Its color, composition, and weight were entirely different, yet the U.S. dime design was perfectly applied. This kind of error, known as an off-metal strike, was incredibly rare in modern coinage. The coin was graded MS-67 and sold privately for a reported sum over $35,000. These discoveries pushed the value boundaries even further. Collectors began to see the 1999 dime error series not as a fluke, but as a complex, multidimensional puzzle. It attracted new eyes to the Roosevelt dime, a series long overshadowed by Lincoln cents and Washington quarters. Error collectors, modern series enthusiasts, and even mainstream investors began taking notice, but the most unexpected development came from an unlikely source: an amateur collector in Montana who, while searching through a jar of coins inherited from his grandfather, found a 1999 dime with a blank reverse. The obverse was perfect, but the back was completely smooth. No torch, no branches, no inscriptions. Just a silvery blank field. The phenomenon, known as a die cap or reverse die failure, occurs when a die fails completely and doesn't strike an image. It was one of the rarest forms of mint errors, and for it to appear on an already rare year added to the shock. When the coin was verified, the community buzzed. No other blank reverse dime from 1999 had ever been recorded. The coin sold at auction for $41,700, setting a new benchmark. Speculation resumed with renewed vigor. Just how many errors had gone unnoticed in this year's mintage? How did they escape detection for so long? What made the 1999 Roosevelt dime errors so fascinating wasn't just their variety or rarity, it was the timeline of their discovery. They emerged not all at once, but gradually, piece by piece, over more than 2 decades. Each new coin added to a story that had begun quietly and only now revealed its full scope, and today, collectors still search. Every bank roll, every coin jar, every handful of change holds potential. Somewhere, another variant may be waiting, an even rarer twist in the tale of the 1999 dime. The story continues to unfold, and for those who treasure the small mysteries hidden in everyday things, the Roosevelt dime of 1999 is more than just currency. It's a testament to imperfection, a celebration of the unexpected, and a symbol of how value often hides in the overlooked. At present, authenticated examples of the 1999 US 1 dime coin error range in value from $50,000 to $105,000 depending on the severity and combination of errors, grade, and provenance. Its journey from anonymity to coveted rarity remains one of the most engaging numismatic stories in recent memory. In 2004, the United States Mint stood at the intersection of modernization and tradition. Technology in minting had progressed significantly. Digital imaging, automated quality control, and high-speed presses defined the production lines. And yet, for all the precision, the mint was still a place where the human element lingered quietly in the background. That year, millions of Roosevelt dimes were produced with expected consistency at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. The Roosevelt dime, unchanged in its design for over half a century, remained a symbol of resilience and continuity. But as history has often shown, perfection in mass production is a fragile illusion. In the heart of that year's production, a flaw emerged. It was subtle, easily missed, and yet it would ripple through the numismatic community with increasing weight in the years that followed. It was in the early spring of 2010 when the first clue was uncovered. In a quiet neighborhood of Eugene, Oregon, an ex-postal worker named Harold Lennox spent his retirement combing through coin rolls from local banks. He wasn't a professional collector, but he had a methodical way of looking at things, a habit forged from years of sorting mail by hand. One morning, while working through his third roll of dimes, something caught his eye. It wasn't obvious at first. The coin looked like any other from 2004. But as he turned it under the light, the profile of Roosevelt seemed slightly distorted. The letters in Liberty appeared stretched, almost duplicated, and the date, 2004, showed a strange shadow behind the digits. Harold placed the dime aside and continued searching. Later that day, curiosity led him to retrieve an old jeweler's loupe and examine the coin more carefully. Under magnification, the doubling became undeniable. The outline of Roosevelt's head bore a faint secondary image, and the word, "In God We Trust," shimmered with a ghostly echo beneath the main strike. This wasn't wear and tear, it was something else entirely. Still unsure of its significance, Harold posted a photo of the coin on an online coin forum. Reactions came in quickly. Some suggested it was classic machine doubling, while others theorized that it might be hub doubling, a more valuable and rare form of mint error. Encouraged by the buzz, Harold decided to send the dime for professional grading. When it returned, the verdict was surprising: strong obverse doubling, likely a result of a misaligned die pair during a high-speed strike. It was officially classified as a mint error. At first, the discovery made only minor ripples. But soon, another collector from Pennsylvania posted a strikingly similar 2004 dime online, this one with doubling on both the obverse and reverse, with the flames of the torch and the oak leaves showing signs of duplication. A pattern began to emerge. The Roosevelt dimes from that year were not supposed to be remarkable. And yet, a growing list of them showed evidence of errors: misaligned dies, doubled dies, weak reading, and even planchet irregularities. By the time a third error was verified from a collector in Texas, word had spread across coin forums and shows. Error hunters turned their attention to 2004, combing through rolls, purchases, and personal collections. Each new find added a layer of intrigue. A dime from Florida showed partial collar strike, resulting in a coin that had a slightly warped edge and uneven thickness. Another from Minnesota was struck slightly off-center, with a wide rim on one side and a thin border on the other, suggesting the coin had shifted during the minting process. What made the 2004 errors unique wasn't just their variety, it was the consistent subtlety. These weren't dramatic off-center monstrosities or blank planchets. They were coins that whispered rather than shouted. You had to look closely. You had to care enough to notice. And those who did began to realize that something had gone awry at the mint that year, something not caught by automated inspections or human oversight. Theories surfaced. Some believed the mint's die maintenance schedule had been disrupted, resulting in worn-out dies remaining in use too long. Others speculated that experimental changes in planchet sourcing may have led to inconsistencies in coin weight and structure. A few even floated the possibility of a foreign planchet mix-up, citing one particularly unusual 2004 dime that appeared darker in tone, slightly thicker, and rang duller than its peers. Upon testing, that dime was found to have a composition inconsistent with standard U.S. coinage, a composition suggesting it may have been struck on a foreign blank, perhaps one intended for a South American or Caribbean contract. Interest surged. Coin shows began featuring panels discussing the quiet errors of 2004. Collectors who once overlooked dimes began digging through change, searching for slight deviations in lettering, spacing, and relief. Dealers began fielding requests specifically for 2004 Roosevelt dimes. The prices, at first modest, began to rise. A coin with light doubling on the obverse might fetch a few $100s in early 2015. But by the following year, a particularly sharp MS-65 grade dime with doubling on both sides sold at a major auction for $2,100. That marked a turning point. Prices climbed steadily thereafter. Coins with more complex or multiple errors fetched premiums. An off-center strike with visible date and mint mark sold for over $4,500. A dime exhibiting machine doubling, weak reverse strike, and edge reading fade sold privately for over $7,000. Then came the unexpected twist, a dime discovered in Washington state that bore a mirror-like surface, almost proof-like in quality, but struck on a circulation planchet. Experts confirmed that it was the result of a die polish mishap where an over-polished die produced an unusually reflective strike. This dime had both visual beauty and a confirmed error pedigree. It sold for $11,300 at an online auction, and collectors began calling it the Ghost Strike. By 2020, the 2004 dime error series was no longer considered niche. It had matured into a recognized field of interest. The range of known errors now included die clashes, where impressions from the opposing die left ghostly remnants on the coin's face, as well as tilted die strikes, where Roosevelt's head appeared to lean ever so slightly in one direction due to incorrect die alignment. Each type contributed to the growing legend. The fascination came not just from the errors themselves, but from the fact that so many had remained undetected for so long. Unlike famous errors like the 1955 double die cent or the 2000 Sacagawea, Cheerios, dollar, the 2004 dime errors were found not in fanfare, but in patience. They rewarded the diligent, the curious, the ones willing to hold a coin to the light just one more time, and even now, after years of discoveries and growing value, new finds still surface. In 2023, a coin dealer from Georgia reported a previously unseen combination, a dime with dramatic reverse doubling and a struck-through grease error on the obverse, causing Roosevelt's face to appear melted or blurred. It stunned even veteran error collectors. The coin sold weeks later for $18,000, setting a new record for the 2004 series. Today, the 2004 US 1-dime coin, once part of the unnoticed currency stream of everyday life, now occupies a prominent place in modern numismatics. Its errors span the spectrum, from subtle to extreme, from mechanical to compositional. It is a coin transformed, a year transformed. No longer just a time-stamped piece of metal, but a portal into the unpredictable and strangely beautiful world of minting anomalies. The value of a 2004 Roosevelt dime with verified error can range dramatically based on type, grade, and rarity. At present, collectors can expect auction prices between $40,000 and $90,000 for the most significant and well-preserved examples. And as the search continues, the story of the 2004 dime remains unfinished, with every new discovery adding another line to its evolving legacy.